हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम बैक टू द चैनल। इस वीडियो में हम एक्सप्लेन करेंगे एक्ट 4 सीन 1 पार्ट 2 एंड ऑल्सो एक्ट 4 सीन 2 के बारे में। चलिए बिगिनिंग से बिगिन करते हैं। Thus, she proceeds with methodical legality until the last moment when she says understandedly, "Tarry a little, there is something else, what which will reverse the whole situation." Now it can be demonstrated anew that Sherlock remains merciless in order to justify the punishment which he finally receives. Portia delay demonstrates this and shows us Sherlock's insistence on the absolute letter of the law, for it will be in accordance with the law that Sherlock will punish Antonio. When Portia ordered Antonio to lay bare your bosom, Sherlock is able to quit from the bond. So says the bond nearest his heart. Those are very words. And when Portia humanly asks Sherlock to have some surgeon to stop his wounds, Sherlock is appalled at Portia's lack of legality. Is it so nominated in the bond? I cannot find it. It is not in the bond. Clearly, Portia is leading Sherlock slowly into a trap which he has prepared for himself. With his reply to her plea for mercy, "My deeds upon my head, I crave the law." At this point, the dignity which Sherlock possessed at the scene's beginning and the sympathy which Shakespeare evoked for him has now gone. As he exults over Antonio's approaching death as an avenger of past wrongs by Antonio, Sherlock gained some sympathy from the audience. Now, within his wife and anticipating with relish the moment when he will be able to use it, he becomes a butcher and loses that sympathy. All of this necessary for the total effect of the play. This is why Shakespeare wisely makes Portia delay finally pronouncements and the ignominiously begin to reveal new interpretations of absolute justice. Shakespeare is manipulating with genius the sympathy of the audience. Antonio's seemingly last speech at line 263 has a dignified nobility. He declares once more his love for Bassanio. He asks him neither to grieve nor repent. At this point, the situation is a potentially tragic one, and once more Shakespeare needs to remind his audience that this is a play. Finally tragic, he achieves this at the moment of greatest tension when he allows the drama to slacken for a moment and we listen it on the little exchange between the distinguished wives, Portia and Neretia, as their husbands declare their love and loyalty for one another. We chuckle when we hear Portia and Neretia comment on these last words between Antonio and Bassanio. The judge and the clerk agree that the wives of these two gentlemen would not be happy to hear their husbands exchange such avowals of ready sacrifice of lives for one another. आगे बढ़ने से पहले अगर आपने मेरे YouTube चैनल स्टडी पॉइंट को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया है तो प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब करें और वहाँ पर जो बेल की घंटी है उसको दबा दीजिएगा जिससे आपको नोटिफिकेशन मिलेगी सबसे पहले. The turning point of this act and of the play occurs at line 304. Tarry a little, there is something else. Obviously, Sherlock has come toward Antonio and now stands with his knife raised to strike while the group on stage stands transfixed. Portia's voice, still calm, cuts through the silence with Portia's pronouncement that the law allows not jot of blood. Sherlock's case is lost. He is almost struck dumb. Is that the law is all he can ask. He was absolutely certain that his trust in the law was inviolate. The law that he believed to be solid crumbles before him, and he realizes that his case is now absolutely irrevocably reversed. The law goes on to condemn him, reversing his position so completely that he himself is threatened with death. Sherlock's last appearance before us in total defeat can in some cases, depending on the actor, win back some of the sympathy lost earlier in this scene, but he is given little to say in comment upon the judgment passed upon him. Here silence is the most powerful kind of eloquence. One can hardly imagine his next to the last line, "I am content," uttered in other way than in almost a whisper. He has been defeated. He a Jew in a Venetian Christian court of law, and as part of his punishment he has had to agree become a Christian. This is an ultimate punishment for so orthodox. Well, send the dead deed after me, and I will sign it This is a masterstroke of simple, understand pathos. Now Sherlock has lost everything. He has shown us, however, how hate breeds hate, and Shakespeare has demonstrated how hate is finally ultimately defeated through Sherlock's extreme behavior. Shakespeare dramatizes the way in which the laws of justice and property on which society is based can be, without charity and mercy and humanity, as ferocious as the law of any jungle. This then, rather than the legal quibble, is what is important in this scene. There is no denying that the rule of law is necessary, but law, when it is not tempered with mercy, is, as Shakespeare vividly shows us, both inhuman and destructive. Since this is the central scene of the play, and since it turns on our interpretation of Sherlock, it follows that the way we see Sherlock here determines the way we see the whole play. If he is placed as a near tragic figure, the conflict between mercy and justice is to some extent obscured. Sherlock is left stripped of his daughter, his property, and his religion. That seems a harsh judgment. At times, it is difficult to see Sherlock as anything but a figure of pathos. We tend to agree with the 19th century writer Hazlitt, who wrote that certainly our sympathies are often with him than with his enemies. He is honest in his vices that are Hippocrates in their virtues. On this point, we ought to recall their things. First, for the Elizabethan audience, Sherlock was not just a characterization. He has the villain of the romantic comedy. As such, he has to be punished. Second, Sherlock's money, which he had hoarded for himself, is to go to Lorenzo and Jessica, two of the play's lover. Love and hate are them thematically opposed in this scene, and since Sherlock is slowly revealed to be the embodiment of bait, there is a satisfying kind of justice in his riches going to pair of lovers. And third, the court's judgment that Sherlock become a Christian would have pleased the Elizabethan audience immensely. They all genuinely believed that only a Christian could achieve salvation. They would see the court decisions as a chance for Sherlock to achieve salvation. Thus, the judgment was imposed quite literally for the good of Sherlock's soul. After Sherlock's exit, the play, which has at times come near to tragedy and which has had, because of Sherlock, an element of pathos, reverts completely to the tone of romantic comedy. The barrier to the true fulfillment of love has been removed. It remains only for us to return to Belmont for the closing act of the play. The threats and conflicts of this act are removed and are replaced by an atmosphere of love and concord. This is Act 4, Scene 2. This act's final brief sum continues the previous scene's closing mood. It is really its conclusion. By this point in the play, we are absolutely sure that Portia and Laetitia will both outface and outswear the men. It is almost a commonplace that in every one of Shakespeare's romantic comedies, the women emerge as shrewder and brighter than the men. Portia is one of those Shakespearean heroines. She is not only superior to all of the men in the climatic scene in the world, but she also excels them indeed. It is she who plans and executes Antonio's deliverance and sees that merciful justice is carried out. Thank you guys for watching this video.